Welcome to day 2 of Everything Open, where we are going to hear about boosting your project's trust signals with great docs from Felicity Brand. Felicity is a technical writer and editor who is passionate about open source and is a firm believer in the power of non-code contributions to open source. Yeah. Felicity will be talking about the benefits to your open source project of having great documentation. Please make her welcome.
All right, I've got my mic on. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. So today I'll be talking about how to boost your project's trust signals with great docs. So I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where I live and work and on which we gather today, the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So I also just need to pop my public speaking stress bubble. If we're not making mistakes, we're not learning, so phew, I'm allowed to make mistakes, everyone, okay? I want to explain that I've used the term docs in my title very broadly. I mean docs, yes, but I also mean much more than documentation. I'm talking about any kind of content or language used in and around your project. So today we're talking about trust signals, how you can broadcast informational cues to help make... I've made a mistake, gang. Our first one, okay. I've got to go back to my slide number 2. G'day. I'm Felicity Brand, aka Flickstar. I identify as a technical writer. I call myself a technical communicator. I work as a communications consultant. I work at Open Strategy Partners. I do a lot of writing and technical editing, mentoring, writer enablement, and training. So I discovered open source pretty recently in 2019 when I took part in Google's first season of docs. You may have heard of their Summer of Code. It was a similar program, but for technical writing. And that's where I discovered I'm intrinsically motivated, so me and open source are a perfect match, really. The 2 open source projects I hang out at are Typo3, which is an enterprise open source CMS, a bit like David Hasselhoff, really big in Germany. I'm a member of the association. I co-authored a book about that product, available at all good bookstores. And actually one of the association board members is here at the conference today, so if you're interested, let me know and I can introduce you. So the other project I hang out at is called the Good Docs Project. I co-founded that. We're a team of technical writers and developers creating templates for open source projects. So we're still young and growing. It's really cool over there. Come and join us if you want to hang out and help us create docs. There's a pretty cool working group looking at trying to automate spinning up a minimum viable doc set. So if that floats your boat, come and say hi. So here's where I work, Open Strategy Partners, or OSP. We're a content marketing agency for tech, product, and service companies. So why is trust a thing for me? As a tech writer, coming from working in large organisations, where there is a tech department and a marketing department, they're very siloed, right? Never the twain shall meet. And now I work for a tech marketing agency. How do I sleep at night? So OSP was co-founded by two founders. Tracy Evans has a really strong marketing and business background, and Jeffrey Maguire, really strong in tech and communications. And between them, they focused on this gaping chasm, this problem of buzzword bingo that you get particularly around marketing and tech. So you might have heard this phrase, developers are allergic to marketing. And their counter to that is this communication framework that we use called authentic communication. And it has 3 main tenets of empathy, clarity, and trust. And so the idea is that we write and speak clearly and accurately about tech. We are producing a lot of content, we do a lot of writing about technology, technical solutions, features, products, services, okay? And we know that we need to understand the tech to be able to talk about it. We use empathy to understand our technical audience and to know what their challenges are, and that builds trust. So trust is important if you want to be a credible authority and if you want people to take action, which is basically what marketing is all about. This is Frances Fry. She gave a well-known TED talk, famously worked at Uber. She talks about building trust, and she says, you can only trust me and trust what I'm saying if what I'm saying has logical rigour, if it makes sense. And you can only trust me and trust what I'm saying if I'm being my authentic self, if you can feel that I am being myself. And thirdly, we can only have trust if I have empathy for you, if I'm putting myself in your shoes. And all that is to say that there's a human element. So say you've built a fantastic tech solution to a known problem, you can't just rely on the tech speaking for itself. There's a human trust element at play. So today we're talking about trust signals, how you can broadcast informational cues to help make that trust connection. As humans in the world, we all make decisions every day, guided by our gut feelings, based on our sense of trust in a product or service. As an open source project owner or maintainer, if you gain a holistic view of how your project presents externally, you can make informed, mindful choices to control and curate the message that you're broadcasting. And some of the most powerful signals come from documentation, content, and language. So here's what I want to cover today. What signals are, why they matter, different types, how you can influence them, and some practical resources. There's some interesting research into trust signals, and how they influence decision-making. So what I really want you to walk away with today is the understanding of how you can influence signals that your project is sending out, and some tools to help you get started doing that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about trust, I'm going to talk a lot about signals, and then I'll give you some resources to help you get started. So what even are trust signals? They're visible cues that help you make rich inferences about the health, culture, vitality of a product or project. And they inform our decisions to take action, whether to download, test, contribute, participate, and so on. And it all happens in the blink of an eye. We're all making big and small and micro decisions every day. Everything is giving out signals. But so just to try and put some scope around it, here in this room today, we're talking about open source projects. It's good to know about your signals because as a project owner or maintainer or contributor, you can get out in front of them and control or curate the message that your project is broadcasting. And that's a good thing because then you can achieve your goals. Here's an example. We've got some docs on the left side there, release notes, README, code of conduct. On the right, we've got some numbers of things, stars, downloads, community activity. So different things can be signals, and signals aren't positive or negative in themselves. They're just information. Open source projects, by their nature, are very open. So there's a wealth of information available to people when it comes to evaluating and decision-making. You can see the release history. You can see who worked on stuff. I don't need to explain open source to you. So we're going to take a look at different types of signals in a minute, but I wanted to look at, first, I want to look at why they matter. Why are we even talking about trust signals? Trust plays an important role in decision-making, whether we realise it or not. Stephen Covey wrote a book called Speed of Trust, and he says, work gets done with and through people. There's nothing more impactful on people, their work and their performance than trust. And he breaks down elements of trust into two categories, competence and character. So competence addresses the questions, can you solve my problem? Can you solve it better than the alternatives? So that might be if you're evaluating open source projects, this code looks okay. There's competence there. On the other side, character addresses the question, do your values align with mine? Do you have a diverse culture? How do you treat user data? Do you communicate authentically? So that might inform your decision to get involved in a community or contribute to a project. So why are you here? What outcomes are you after with your project? Let's look at a few scenarios of decision-making in open source. Maybe you've built a great solution that solves a problem. You want people to use it. So maybe your goal is downloads, okay? So Stephen Covey's trust model, the competence section. People are going to use your trust signals to decide whether or not to use your code. Can it solve my problem? Another example, maybe you just need more people to help you. You want to increase contributions. You want folks to decide to engage with your project. So you want patches, bug fixes, merge requests. Signals are going to tell people how engaged the maintainers are, how active the project is. Should they invest their time fixing a bug? And a third example, maybe you want to grow your community. So now we're looking at Stephen Covey's character trust traits. What type of community surrounds this project? Are they organised, welcoming, inclusive? Do their values align with mine? So whatever your goals, there are things you can do to control or curate your signals to help you achieve them. We're going to take a look at an example of trust signals in play. So this is a very general staircase to contribution. Each of the steps on this staircase will have associated signals that influence decision-making to keep people stepping along the journey. So let's imagine a simple example of contributing a bug fix to a project. It starts with attention, so maybe there's a social media post or word of mouth. So next comes interest. I have that problem. That's interesting to me. Now we're starting to look at signals. I look up the project, I find it on GitLab, I read the README. Next comes trust in the technology. So I download it, I try it, it works. It solved my problem, yay. But there's a bug. Whoa, I don't know, do I invest my precious time in fixing this thing? Is it worth it? Okay, so maybe I decide to spend 5 minutes looking around the repo. I can see issues are being responded to, people seem to be talking to each other in a rational manner. Maybe I dig a bit further. Oh, they've got a feature roadmap. Okay, that's cool. So people are using it, patches are getting put in, there's some kind of future plan. Okay, I've decided. I'll contribute a fix. Now I just need to find out how to do that. Do they have a contributor's guide? No, that's okay. It's covered in the README. Okay, there's an issue template. Great. So this project is organised, it's active, it's solved my problem. I'm going to contribute a patch, and you know what, maybe I'll stick around and see if I can help anyone else. So that's one example. Obviously, there are other examples, and different signals will be associated with different journeys. So yep, that's all I wanted to say. So different staircases for different user journeys, like downloading or joining a community, different signals are going to be important for those parts. All right, so we're going to take a look at types of trust signals, and there's 2 types. Spoilers. So we've got some direct signals. They're highly visible clues. So I say that because they're usually built into a user interface. If you think of GitHub or GitLab, lots of numbers on the landing page for any repo. So these are quick and easy to consume, and they make an immediate impression. So looking at these, they're almost quantitative. There's a lot of numbers there. And you might use these direct cues to make quick decisions about the quality or the current state of play of a project. This code looks okay. I'll install it and move on with my life. The next set, by contrast, are indirect. You have to work harder to glean information from these signals. So they're inferred from browsing through content. They aren't quant, they're much more qualitative. Normally found in docs, in issue threads, in conversation, content and language. So people can gauge the tone of the community, your cultures and attitudes around things like respect, inclusion, diversity, accessibility. And you might use these indirect cues to make decisions from a longer-term perspective. Is this project worth investing my time? Going back to Stephen Covey, do their values align with mine? Will I participate? Will I contribute? Will I engage? So if you haven't been paying attention until now, here's a good time to tune back in. An important attribute of signals is their production cost. Signals that are costlier to produce are considered more reliable because they are harder to fake. This principle comes from signal theory, and it applies across fields like biology and economics. So in our example of an open source project, it might be that you could get a bot to artificially increase the number of forks or stars on your repo. So although those signals are highly visible and quick to consume, hey, this project's popular, they're not going to be as persuasive or carry that same weight as an indirect signal. Things that are costlier to produce, like documentation. So a high-quality README takes a little bit of time and effort and is a really powerful signal. Being organised enough to have clear and useful labels on your issues, that takes time. So there's a high production cost for those indirect signals, but they have more meaning and they're considered more reliable. So what does that mean? It means you should invest your time in improving your indirect signals. Put the work in now, take some action, get out in front of your signals and control what you're broadcasting. And the investment you make into that higher production cost will flow through to impact your other signals. Okay, let's say you're sold. Before you dive in, just need to point out that it's important to know that context is important. So the same signal can mean different things to different people. Same signal can be both attractive and unattractive. For example, a detailed contributors guide might excite some new contributors. All those detailed instructions for them to follow takes them to their happy place. Or it might be totally off-putting to other people, like, too much process overhead and high bar to participation. So what's meaningful is going to vary from person to person, and it depends on your goals as a project, what you're trying to achieve, what you think is important. You might really love process. It's how you work. It's what you value, and it's a trust signal. So that's setting expectations for a newcomer. At this point, I'll just mention CHAOSS. This is the Community Health Analytics for Open Source Software, a project at the Linux Foundation. And they're focused on creating a neutral set of reference metrics to analyse open source community health. And health, in this case, plays into trust and trust signals. So that neutralness is kind of important because different things can mean different things to different people. based on their role and what they're trying to achieve. So check out Chaos if you're interested in diving deeper into that. Okay, we finally reached the practical steps. Let's look at what you can do. So there are 3 things I'll talk about. One is doing an audit. The second is defining your values. And lastly, we'll look at content and language. So an audit gives you an idea of what your project signals are going to say to a newcomer or an outsider. Basically, you make a list, you decide what's important to you, and you think about what you're trying to achieve. But where do you start? Okay, so to help you, we're going to look at a study. This study was published in 2019. It has a long name. The signals that potential contributors look for when choosing open source projects. And this study came up with a list of key signals that people use to inform their decision about whether or not they're going to contribute to something, in this case specifically a GitHub project. So this is going to give you some idea of what to include in your audit checklist. It wasn't an exhaustive study, but you've got to start somewhere. And this is just about contributing, so bear that in mind. So looking at this list, even if you think your project is pretty well covered, it won't hurt to do a quick audit of what you've got and look for opportunities for improvement. For example, you might think, oh, your repos have a README, it exists, tick. That's a direct signal, so yay for you. But let's look deeper. What's the quality of your README? Is it structured? What language have you used? That's an indirect signal, and it's where people are going to infer more meaning about your project. So I did just want to touch briefly on all of these. So except for website, I don't want to focus on websites because I don't think it's appropriate for every project to have one. Leave that up to you. But a README, it's a project's welcome mat. People expect a standard set of information included here. The what, the why of your project, how to install it and use it, contact information maybe, how you're accepting contributions, if at all. Popularity. That's a direct signal. It turns out people actually care how many stars you've got, according to this study. Popularity is important. It can, according to the study, it can imply high levels of contribution. So the way you would influence your popularity is not really by docs, it's more PR. So you'd probably be going to events, giving talks, industry participation. So if stars are important to you, that's where you can focus. Looking at activity, recency of commits, distribution. Is there an even distribution of contribution? Is it always the same few people? That's neither good nor bad. It's just an informational cue. Average response time on issues, that's your direct signal. And responsiveness, that's your indirect. So what they mean by that is conversational threads, any kind of language and attitude, how people are talking to each other. Are they being snarky? How people are being treated in that responsiveness. And number of open issues and unmerged pull requests. So that's your direct signal because it's a number. And their reasons, that's your indirect signal. So you may have loads of open PRs, open issues, and that may be fine because they all have valid reasons for being open. And if that's indicated in the thread, in respectful language, there's your indirect trust signal. Contributor guidelines. So a great contributor workflow reduces the friction between discovering something you'd like to fix and fixing it. So it doesn't have to be its own document, can be a section of your README, so long as it's thorough. And this study found that for some people, the lack of any kind of contribution guidelines gives an immediate negative impression. So that might be something you decide is a priority for you. Bonus points for non-code contribution workflows, and again, that depends on your goals. Scaffolding in this study refers to use of labels and templates for issues, templates for pull requests or merge requests. And this shows that the project is organised, it has structure. Code quality. Obviously, code quality is an important marker for project use. And the way you can show that is by embedding badges in your README to demonstrate that the code base is fully tested. According to this study, contributors looked for readable, well-structured code with few dependencies. So that may be something that's important for you. And community tone. So if you're browsing a repo, you're diving into docs, issue threads, look at the language used in those docs. It's going to demonstrate the social norms of the project. So if all that feels overwhelming, I'm just going to give a shameless plug for Open Strategy partners. We do offer a trust and vibrancy signal audit service where we will do all this hard work for you. We'll analyse your project, look at these signals and give you a report on areas that you can focus on. Okay, so you've done your audit. What's next? Before you take action, you might want to think about your goals. Think about what you value. Decide who and how you want to be. And you don't have to spend a lot of time. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. But it's going to help you make decisions about how you write, talk, communicate in your project. So a code of conduct is a really good way to do this. Code of conduct should not only state the rules of the conduct, but should explain why they exist. For example, we enforce these rules because we want to accomplish these goals. If you don't have time to choose your values and document them, check out the freely available Contributor Covenant, which is a code of conduct you can use and is adopted by many notable open source projects. It's a really light lift. Will set you up pretty quickly. So if you do that one thing when you leave here today, that's a trust signal right there. All right, the third thing, you've done your audit, you've worked out what you value, now comes the hard part. No one likes working on docs, except for me. I'm a tech writer. So docs are hard. Make it easy on yourself. Get yourself a whole bunch of templates. GitHub and GitLab, obviously, have a whole raft of templates. They provide lots of resources to improve project and community health signals. If you're starting from zero, come to my project, the Good Docs project. We have software and community templates to kickstart your docs. They're written in Markdown, they're in a GitLab repo. Go and help yourself. Each template has a companion guide that drills down and explains what to include in each section, written and reviewed by tech writers, so you can be confident you're getting quality. If you really want to nerd out with other tech writers, check out Write the Docs community. That's a free open community. And they have a massive Slack workspace with a multitude of channels devoted to tech solutions and process about tech writing. So if you're interested in automating docs, docs as code, documenting APIs, prose linters, maybe you're learning tech writing, maybe you're managing writers, go and check out that community because there's a wealth of resources there and friendly people to help you. So I've listed a couple of other resources there that I like. And I've got links to all of these later that I can share with you so you can grab them for yourself. If you know of other good resources, please shoot them through to me because I really like collecting this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, that was good. So you've written some really good docs. Now you want to set expectations around how you want other people to talk and write in your project. So you can do this with a contributor's guide and or a code of conduct. I really like how Symfony does this. So this is from Symfony. They bake their language guidance into their contributor's guide. They have a great page called Respectful Review Comments, and I encourage you to go check it out. It's basically guidance for anyone who's reviewing code and leaving feedback in their project. And I just wanted to point out these two sentences to you because they really pack a punch. They're setting expectations really clearly to anyone who's doing a code review in their project. So firstly, you don't have to be formal, great. And we don't expect you to have error-free English. So you can make mistakes, yay. So those two things right there are making the reviewer comfortable. Chillax, we're not expecting perfection. The next two things make the receiver of feedback comfortable. So don't swear, that's a pretty easy rule to follow, and be respectful. So anyone who's submitting a bug fix knows, going into the review process, that they're not going to get sworn at and they'll be treated with respect. So those two sentences encapsulate so much, they're setting a baseline. This is the absolute minimum bar we at Symphony need if you, a community member, are going to comment on someone else's bug fix. So I really like how they've done that. I do encourage you to go and check out their contributors guide and just take a leaf out of their book. I think they've done it really well. So you can go further. My animation. You've set expectations. Now you might like to help the community meet those expectations. And this is probably more for advanced players, okay? You can do this with a style guide or a writer's guide. It doesn't have to be lengthy. So this is an example from Typo 3. So that's a large, mature project. There's a lot of content that gets produced around that product. We've got a couple of websites, we've got blogs, we've got events, presentations, obviously docs. So Typo 3 has a guide that says, when you're talking or writing about our project, here's the way that we want you to do it. Here are the guidelines and rules that we want you to follow. And that's a trust signal because it shows that people have thought about it and they're cultivating their culture. They're cultivating the culture that reflects their values. And it makes people feel confident and safe. So if I'm coming to this project new, I'm thinking, do their values align with mine? And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, actually, they kind of do. They're organised. They know what they care about. They have guidelines I can follow. And we don't have to all share all of the same values, just enough to make a trust connection and trigger that decision making. Whew, okay, check it out. We're almost wrapping up. So this is what I talked about. Be aware of what you're broadcasting, and you can influence the signals that your project is putting out. So what I want you to walk away with today is the knowledge that you can take action. There are things you can do. There are templates and resources to help you. So you can take stock of how you're communicating your technical competence and community character. You can do a trust signal audit, articulate your values, and put effort into creating docs and using language that reflects those values. And that will flow through to entice newcomers to your project, and happy days. So I've listed all of the research for this talk and the references and resources I used on a blog post, which hopefully that link is not broken. If it is broken, you can find that on the Open Strategy Partners website, blog. And that wraps it up, team. Thank you very much. Thank you for... Thank you for listening. I know that 40 minutes is a long time to pay attention. Yeah, please get in touch if you want to talk more. And if you know of any other templates or resources, please share them with me. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Felicity? I can see one.
Thank you so much for that. Looking specifically at one particular class of people you might be trying to engage, if you have a project that has plenty of technical contributors and you're looking to attract more documentation contributors to, or you know, in the rest of that space to help go from we've got a README to we've got a really good README, what sort of trust signals would you advise that documentation people in particular are looking for?
Whew. That's a good one. Well, I mean, I guess, so you're asking me about, so as a technical writer, I would say I would like a writer's guide. But that's tricky. If you're a highly technical group of people, you've probably never put together a writer's guide before. Maybe just a really great README would be enough. I guess a writer would be looking to see that people cared about their docs without necessarily having the capacity to do the docs. But certainly in circles I move in, there are often tech writers and also young or new upcoming tech writers who are looking for open source projects to contribute to. So it's almost like we need a matchmaking service there to get them together.
If I might give an observation here, but I participated in a project that actually has, from your assessment, quite a good set of trust. And we've managed to acquire a couple of people who are interested in documentation. And indeed very good at it. One of them wrote a style guide for us. But they often feel somewhat lonely within the team because very technical people don't like writing documentation. And it's worse than that. They often won't even just hand it to the technical people to handle in some sufficient detail, at least, for those writers, those people with that writing inclination, to be able to turn it into lovely language and put it up on the website or in the repo or in the README and so on. So it can feel very lonely in a entirely technical group to be the person with the urge to document.
Yes.
Because you can find yourself struggling to get people to give you the content
Yes.
in a form you can use to tidy up and make pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. I don't have a good answer for that. It's the lot of the technical writer's life, I think. And we all, I suppose I can only speak for myself, we develop strategies to try and combat that challenge. No easy answers. My advice to a lonely writer person would be to get involved with the Write the Docs community, because then you can find your people, obviously. It's a challenge, yes. I don't know. I see and hear and feel the pain of that. Yeah.
Many different softwares have like a wiki system or something built into them, like GitHub's got a wiki and all that. But I guess the question I've got is, do you prefer to have the documentation with the code or separate it out and tell someone to go visit the wiki? So would you prefer like using a whole bunch of .md files or have a bigger wiki page?
Interesting. My immediate answer to that would be maybe do some user research and find out how people are consuming that information. So, and that would hopefully tell you whether you want to put your effort into putting docs on the wiki or some other way. So you need to find out how they want to consume the docs. I don't know if I've really answered your question there.
Thank you, Felicity. Amazing talk. Super inspiring. You said you're really passionate about non-code contribution. Hi, me too. What have you seen works best to invite and cultivate your non-code contributors?
I've only ever had good experiences. So my limited experience with open source project has been very supportive and welcoming of non-code contributions. So I don't know if I know the answer, but I'm sure someone in this room would know of how to do that. I guess you just need to somehow... Well, I guess the first thing to do would be to include a non-code contributor workflow in your contribution guidelines.
So, I'm part of a big open source project, and we have all of our documentation online in GitHub, and people can submit bug reports and pull requests to that as well. Is that the most appropriate workflow for writing contributions, or is some other workflow better?
I would say yes, if you've got some dedicated people actioning those.
You never see any.
Right. Okay, so I hear what you're saying. Okay, so for Typo 3, we have a similar setup. So we've got our docs, and there's a little edit on GitHub button on every documentation page. And We will occasionally see people submit through that. You may need to, if I were you, I would just publicise that, maybe make it really known. I know in Typo 3 we made a little video about it. We kind of got the head of product to say, this is what you can do, it's really great, you know, trying to encourage people to do that. That comes with its own challenges as well. Some of the issues that do come through on, you know, submitting changes on docs pages aren't valuable sometimes. Yeah, so you really do need a team at the back of that. Yeah, it's tricky. Docs are hard.
I think we've got time maybe for one more.
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Felicity said as well. I mean, in the Typo 3 community, we've had two important things that have helped people contribute, and that is the edit on GitHub button and having a documentation team that takes care of the community aspect of being a documentation contributor. That it is extremely important, because what keeps people back often is the first step over the threshold and actually doing your first contribution, just like with code.
Do we have time for one more question, AV folks? One more? Well, in that case, would you all join me in thanking Felicity once again, please?